Hello, everyone, and welcome to Science World's Girls in STEAM Mentor Panel event on artificial empathy. My name is Catherine Anderson, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. First, I would like to begin by gratefully acknowledging that Science World is located in traditional unceded Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh village site of Snock. To begin. Now, let's meet our panelists. Olivia Norton is a co-founder of Sanctuary AI, a Vancouver-based AGI company developing embodied intelligence systems. And Chazi Anjulo is the Unreal Development Supervisor at Wild Brain Animation Studios, where she's helped build the animation pipeline using Unreal Engine. Now, those are very impressive descriptions. Can you tell us a bit about the work that you do?
Maybe I'll kick us off. Very nice to be here with everyone today. I'm very excited to share a little bit about this. This is a fascinating topic that is a particular passion of mine. A little bit more about the work that I do. So I'm going to frame this with a video. Don't mind me while I get my screen up. Oh, I'm going to give the folks a minute to let me share my screen. And in the meantime, I'll tell you that Sanctuary AI is building intelligent embodied machines, which is a bit of a mouthful. But what we mean is robots that are able to behave and act in the real world, kind of the way that we do or that animals do. And these robots are intended to really work beside people. And they're actually the same envelope as people, which I will show you guys in a moment. But the thought there is, we live in a human world defined by us, for us, and what better way to have a system like this be able to integrate with us than to have it shaped like us. Shazi, I might pass it off to you.
Okay, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shazi, and like Catherine said, I work in animation, and I primarily use Unreal Engine to make animation. And Unreal Engine is the same technology that is used to make Fortnite. So instead of using it to make video games, we repurposed it to make animation. And they have a lot of cool free software out there that I will be sharing about creating digital humans. They just came out with a free tool called MetaHuman about maybe a couple weeks ago, where you can make avatars that look like you. So I'll be showing my version of me that I made, and just kind of talking about, they feel human, but there's still some things that are off, and how as creators, whether you're making art or you're writing scripts and things like that, creating characters that have empathy, I think, is really important. And it's something, practicing in your own life every day. So having empathy with people you work with and your friends and your family, if you practice that, then we can create, robots and artificial humans that also show that. So I think that's super important to keep in mind as we talk about all of this too.
Catherine, if you don't mind, I can jump back in and maybe share my video now. Okay, we've got it up and running. Let me show you guys what we're up to. So while I let this play in the background, I'll just speak to it a little bit. So I mentioned that we're building human-like robots, and this is an example of the type of human-like robot that we are building. What you see in this video is an inset up in the top right corner, and that inset is actually a human pilot in the background, helping this system to behave in an intelligent way until such time as that system is able to do it on its own. And this is a really interesting aspect of the technology that we're developing, in that it's important to have data to inform how these systems will work. And so this allows the system to both act in a useful and appropriate way while capturing that data that is so important to the system's development. One of the things that might be obvious by the way that this video is shot is that we're very much focused on both the empathetic side, the social aspect of how these machines integrate with us, and the physical side of how do they interact with the world. And so this robotic hand that you see here in the foreground is demonstrating some of the capability, the physical capability of the robotic system. So you can imagine this hand doing everything from threading a needle to moving things around to shaking hands or playing a game of chess with someone.
So this is called MetaHuman, and this is my digital version. There's 20 different humans that you can pick from a starting place, and then you have all these different options where you can make them. Again, this just came out, so they're still working on it, but you can change the hair color, the eyebrows, the eyelashes, all these different shapes. So you can go through here and kind of play with this. And again, this is all free. So you can, make your hair different colors. You can change your eyebrows, a whole bunch of different things. And then you can kind of preview it and see how this character comes to life. So it took me maybe an hour to make this character. And again, this is kind of similar to what I do for work. So I think it kind of feels like me, but something's still off. But the really cool part is then you can take this character and you can actually bring it into Unreal. So this software here is Unreal Engine, and it's free, and this is what I use for work. And I just added a couple accessories to my human so it matches me a little bit better. But then what you can do is I'm taking my iPhone, and my iPhone, there's this app, and it's going to read your face. And then I can actually be my character. So you can kind of see that it's matching my expressions. And as I talk, move my head around, you can kind of see the ponytail moving in the background. So then you can bring this character to life. And they have, there's, it's a full body and things like that. So you can play with this and imagine then if you had a bodysuit on, it's called motion capture, then you can move the character and bring it to life. So this is a lot of kind of what I work with and look at is how can we use different pieces of technology to bring these characters to life. So that is my Meta Shazzy.
So the two of you together then will create a very realistic looking human that can do what humans do, right? So because the title of this is AI and empathy, I guess one of the questions is how do you define empathy and how does it impact the work that you're doing? Because I know people have different definitions, so.
I'll jump in. Let's see, empathy, for me in the context of the work that we do, empathy is really the ability of these systems to understand the context with which the people that it is interacting with have. So perhaps this system is speaking with somebody in high school who is thinking about whether to pursue a career in AI, and having that understanding, that system might be able to ask questions, about interests or the future that they are hoping to see or build. So it's this taking the information that we have about the interaction that we're having with that person and extending that to a broader understanding that allows us to really interact at a level that is meaningful, that is supportive, that is helpful. And all of this in service of a great interaction between people.
So for me, a lot of it, because we're in animation, you're in even video games, you're making these characters and bringing them to life. And I think there's kind of two parts to it. Is when you're creating these characters, you want them to have empathy so that when you're watching the movie or you're watching the TV show or playing the game, they feel relatable. And I think, sympathy versus empathy, also to kind of clear the distinctions, like sympathy, if, someone you're working with has a bad day, you're like, oh, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. The empathy is really feeling like, oh, wow, I had a bad day last week. I understand what they're going through. This is what I needed when I was going through that. So working in animation, anywhere you work, actually, you're on big teams too. So it's not only about what you're making, but all your peers as well. A lot of what I do is Unreal is so new and it's a new technology, and animation's been made the same way for such a long time. So now I'm coming in saying, nope, you're going to have to learn something brand new. And with that comes a lot of frustrations, wanting to revert to the old way. So a lot of what I do is, working and teaching with people about, hey, here's the new technology. And I think for me, it's, I always lean back on like, okay, when was it something new that I was learning and I was really frustrated with? And how would I have wanted a teacher or my peer to talk to me? So I think even how we work with each other is super important. And if we're practicing that, then I think that will automatically show in all the different, characters or robotics or anything that you're making. It'll be a natural kind of influence to it.
It sounds almost, I don't know if this is, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you know how if you watch some movies and there's characters that are just very one-sided, they're way more interesting and relatable when they're complex. And so it sounds like you're trying to bring a little bit of that complexity and the fact that not everybody is just one thing into some of the interactions with the robots, and something we are trying to do a little bit more as humans too. And not everything is just one experience. So is there anything you'd like to learn more about empathy, or that would help your work with that sort of human artificial intelligence interaction?
One of the things that is so interesting, and Shazzy, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this as well. So folks will be familiar perhaps with the term uncanny valley. And in the case of humanoid robots, what this means is that as your robot is sort of approaching, looking like a person, there's a bit of a dip before they truly are able to kind of trick you, where there's things that are not quite aligned with your expectation, and they throw you off a little bit. And this actually has in literature and in some of the human robot interaction studies, you'll see that people are actually less inclined to want to engage with that technology or with that system when they're in this space that we call the uncanny valley. And I am curious about whether there is a similar environment, a similar valley in empathy specifically. So before you're quite there at the human level empathy, is there a region where you're a little bit suspicious about the empathy that you think you're receiving, but you're not too sure? So that's an area where I would definitely love to explore more and learn more.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, visually, like all the cues that we have, like definitely when you see these, virtual humans, there is something off, and that's the experience that Olivia was explaining. And, a lot of it people talk about, at least on the animation side, is that, when you look in someone's eyes as a human, like you usually see, everyone always says it's about the eyes, or you see the depth, or you look into their soul. And, the opposite of that too is, there's some people and you look into their eyes and it's empty, and you feel that regardless. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like when you look at these digital humans and you look in the eyes, you don't quite feel anything yet. So, working towards that on the visual side. But I think what Olivia brought up is really interesting, is like, is there that same feeling with empathy or even other emotions where you're like, this doesn't feel natural or this doesn't feel real? I think that's something I haven't thought about or experienced that. And it's definitely interesting to see, like, maybe if we're not looking at something and it's just a conversation, do we feel something off as well? And what is it that's off? Because sometimes it's hard to pinpoint that too.
I think sometimes people experience that when they're talking to chatbots or something on a website, where you're having to change what you're trying to say to get the chatbot to understand you, rather than the chatbot kind of going, oh, that's what you mean. And that's why sometimes people just want to talk to a human. So I'm super fascinated, but I'm going to stop asking all the questions about empathy. But I do want to find out, how did you get started in these careers?
Sure. So when I was younger, I loved to draw, and I always, I wanted to do animation ever since I was little. And as I kind of approached, deciding, okay, I'm going to go to school, what am I going to study? Art school was definitely like a huge option. But I also really liked math and problem solving. So I figured, okay, Disney and Pixar, they use computers because they make animation, so they need engineers. And that was my whole game plan. So I studied computer science in my undergrad and really started trying to take all the graphics classes and did a lot of programming. And then I went and got my master's also in computer science, but I specialized in video game development, which was kind of a cool option of like, okay, now I'm seeing the graphics and bringing things to life, but still really on the programming side. So that was kind of how I got started. And after that, I was at Nickelodeon for 4 years looking at immersive technology and focusing on how do we put kids in cartoons and how, they don't sit in front of a TV anymore, and how do we, bring these characters into their world and how do we put them in. So that's kind of everything that I've been working with, and again continued on at Wild Brain, looking at animation and cartoons kind of the future. So I've always loved characters and worlds and bringing them to life and doing that, both artistically and technically.
That's amazing. And it makes me kind of want to try my hand at animation. That's very exciting. I'm not in animation, though it sounds like I kind of might want to be at some point. I am in AI, and how I got started in this field. So I did an undergraduate degree in computer engineering at the University of Calgary. And at that time, I had this interest in sort of merging the humanness, and what I did to try to incorporate that into my education early on was to do a specialization in biomedical engineering, which generally, from the perspective of sort of the mechanical design side, is prosthetics and things like this. But because of my major in computer engineering, and I was the only one at that time, this was really in the space of, machine brain interfacing or other sorts of interesting ways that you might combine sort of the computer side and the biological side. I spent a few years in Calgary still in the energy industry, and realized actually through something completely unrelated to my work at the time. I did my yoga teacher training because that's something that I find useful and exciting and a core part of my regular routine. That meditation and my exposure to meditation through that was fascinating. And I was thinking about it through this lens of like computer engineer, like I wonder what's going on in there that is different from my regular going about my day. So I ended up going back to do a master's, and I was really hoping to explore this. This is when minds really came into the picture for me. What's going on with minds when you're under sort of the meditation spell. And so I did a master's in engineering, and I wanted to merge it with business because I was curious about the idea of starting my own business and seeing where that could take me. So I brought these two things together and serendipitously found a company in Vancouver that was focused on this question of minds and computing, so intelligent machines. Through that meeting, that group of folks, we ended up becoming the company that I am with today. And so it was really a matter of understanding what I was excited about and really grabbing onto the opportunities that came up that were in the right space to pursue those passions.
That's cool. And it sounds like really good advice. So, is there any other advice or anything you wish you'd known when you were a little bit younger to help you get where you are, or anything like that?
There's a whole list, but I'm going to shorten it for today's purpose. I would say, well, that first one that I just shared around, you know what you're interested in and what you like, and there's always these really interesting ways of combining that with your traditional bachelor's at university and making that into a career, and just the tooling and the scale at which we are able to look to find niches that are interesting to us now is huge. So really take advantage of the possibilities that are out there. The other thing that I would say is ask for things that you want. So if you are curious about something, or if you are fascinated by somebody's job, if you find somebody inspiring but you have no connection to them, I would really recommend reaching out There are so many people in the network of technology and more broadly that are really excited about sharing their time and expertise with folks who are deciding at this moment what they want to do with their career. And I would recommend taking advantage of that as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. And kind of going off of that, like, always ask questions, stay curious. I know it's like you see us talking here and it's like, wow, how did they get there? But like, I cried. Like there's times I cried and that's fine. Like it doesn't have, some days are easy and some days aren't. And just, as long as each day you're kind of like chipping away and you're taking steps forward, that's all that really matters. And just kind of sticking with it. And like Olivia said, like, it's both of us had all these little, passions and things we liked, and we're like, we combined them all. So, studying computer science or engineering or anything in STEAM, it's like, that's just a tool to help you, push towards what you like. And mine was like cartoons. So I was like, okay, I'll take that and combine it with cartoons. So just figure out those, multiple things you like, the one thing you like, and just, that's you, and kind of stick with it. And, it's not, failures are okay and they're going to happen. And, I think there's so much pressure to excel at school, but like now that we both work, I'm sure Olivia has the same experience. Like we have a team of people, and when I don't know something, I just go ask my coworkers. It's not, you're not by yourself. So, and I think I ask more questions now, and there's even more things I don't know the more I learn. So you're always learning, and it never stops. So kind of find what you like to learn about and stick with that.
So related to that, for both of you, did you think when you were younger that this is the kind of work that you would be doing? Like, did you have a goal and you like worked really hard to get there? Because that's often what's shown to people is like, I'm going to be X, and everything you do goes towards that. Or did you sort of flounder a little bit and then just put the different things that you like together and end up here? Does that kind of make sense? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think for me, it was always like, I'm going to do animation, but the path that got me there was not what I expected. Like I worked at like 2 tax software companies. I worked at a defense company. Like it was not, I never thought I would work at any of those places, and it doesn't make any sense for like animation, but those were all stepping stones for me. So it's like, I knew I wanted to get here, but I had no idea what the path would look like. I never knew anything about computer science or engineering or, what adults do. So that was kind of the surprising path, but I always kind of had like a little North Star. I was like, okay, well, this internship doing tax software is just for the summer. And, I learned all these new things. I learned what I liked. I learned what I didn't like. So sometimes a lot of the things you experience that don't seem like they have any relevance to your passion actually teach you a lot, and teaching you what you don't want to do is just as valuable. So I think that was the surprising, was kind of that path and all that, but I always kind of knew that cartoons somehow I wanted to be involved in.
Right. Absolutely agree. You think of a career maybe initially as linear, but there are so many steps along the way that provide the learnings that Shazzy is describing that may not seem directly tied to that goal that you're seeking, but they're helping to sculpt and evolve your path all the way along. One of the things that I love to think about when I think about this kind of thing is my definition of luck, which actually is this just the one I've adopted. I did not make this up, but around opportunity. Luck being opportunity meeting preparation. So on the preparation side, it's like, how do I invest in the things that interest me, the things in my community, the things, in my family and friends that allow me to broaden my landscape of preparation, such that when an opportunity comes along that is something that I really want to grab onto and hold, I'm ready to do that. And I've got, some of the skills already, and I'm going to learn the others along the way. It is also a bit of a process of being able to let go or be flexible in what you think the past should be versus what it will be. And just being open to the opportunities that do not seem necessarily like they're a direct line to where you think you want to go, but are going to provide so much value, and also broaden that landscape of possibility.
Great advice and interesting stories. I guess now we want to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. I have one to ask you from the audience, which is there any research about developing machine empathy and how that might impact human response? So the example they've given is technology is being used to distribute misinformation or sway political opinion. Are you concerned about any of that with getting empathy in machines?
Maybe I'll try kicking that one off. So yes. So with any technology, there are applications of it that are not ultimately going to be super useful to us as a social group. And I would say that application of empathy as sort of a tool to manipulate information or to manipulate belief is one of the negative possible ways that this technology could be used. So and this is, a conversation that is happening in AI. This is a conversation that is happening some of the more tangible applications of AI, like self-driving cars. How do you help to constrain or direct or otherwise try to limit the negative impacts of a technology and its uses while optimizing for the ways that it could really benefit? So let me give you a counterexample. If you think of somebody who maybe would benefit from going to visit like a psychologist or a health professional to talk through some of the challenges that they're having in their life, and they have some concerns about doing that. They don't want to open up to a person. One of the things that might be really nice is the ability to open up to a machine that you don't necessarily feel like you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position, but you're able to share and you're able to maybe get some of the feedback and incorporate that into your way of thinking and into maybe the way that you act to allow you to move forward through whatever that challenge is. And that's a really nice application of assisting somebody to change the way that they're thinking about an environment or a context. So my personal take on this is eyes wide open, continue to have conversations around this. This is an important thing to bring up at all stages of technology development and commercialization. And then to really think about on the policy side and regulation side, how do we want to frame the rules around how we use this technology as much as that is able to constrain or direct these different waves.
And I think adding to what Olivia is saying is like, it's any technology really that comes out, and, there's always, the important thing is if you have good people and good intentions making it, and like Olivia said, having your eyes open to it at every stage, and, being aware of like, how this could be used in a negative way, and knowing that that's there, and just, again, keeping your eyes open to it, educating people, and again, hoping that, there's more good people out there that are using this technology and wanting to create better environments and experiences for everyone will outweigh the people that are going to use it in a bad way. And just knowing that it's out there, and, be one of those people on kind of the good side of technology.
We have a couple questions from the audience. So one is, what's your favorite thing about your career?
That's always a hard one. I think there's two parts to it. Is like, I always love seeing kind of the process. When, you're first starting on a TV show or a movie, there's, it's just an idea, and there, you start seeing scripts, and you see the behind the scenes, and you see all the hard work, and you see things that are broken and not working and all that stuff. And I think seeing all of that, and then finally seeing the finished product, and 50 people worked on this to bring this to life, and you worked with all 50 of those people. I think that's a really cool thing of being like, hey, we all did this together. And then also looking back and laughing and be like, oh my gosh, remember when this didn't work or we couldn't figure this out? And then, kind of reflecting on that. And then obviously kind of animated worlds and all these characters, you kind of like, you get attached to them like they're real characters. And, when the show ends and things like that, and you have to move on, it's kind of this weird feeling. It was like, I saw you when you were a doodle and now you're alive and now we have to move on. So I think that's kind of like the fun part of what I do.
I also have a hard time picking just a couple of things, but I'm going to pick like a meta level and then the detail level. So on the detailed side, the breadth of types of knowledge and types of teams and types of technology that we're working with, just because of the nature of this project that we've taken on, is enormous. And so the learning manifold is enormous, which I love. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you understanding that there's just so much more out there that you don't yet have a context around. And you get to work with these amazing, super smart, super creative, and super generous people in all of these different fields that are helping you to do some of that learning on your side while you're helping them in return. So that's one piece. And then the second piece at a kind of meta level is this project that we're working on is sort of fundamentally new type of thing. Like this is something the world hasn't really seen before, and yet it has been something that people have been thinking about and trying to do for a very long time. This idea of creating things in our likeness is rampant throughout history, and the impacts of that change are potentially very large and could mark a shift in the way that we structure our economy and the way that we structure our world. And being a part of that and helping to direct the way that is moving forward is an important thing for me, and a thing that I really like about my work.
How can AI be programmed to understand the feelings of humans? And how close do you think AIs can get to a normal human brain?
Great question. And a big conversation internationally, globally, around that. So let me see if I can answer the first question first, with regards to how you might teach a machine to be empathetic. And ultimately, us as humans, if you think about the way that we're structured and the way that our behaviors come to be, there is kind of two levels. There's the stuff that comes through our genetics, the stuff that allows us to learn to walk at a particular age, to learn to talk at a particular age, that sets us up for one broad direction in life. And then there's the stuff that we learn through our experience day to day and growing up and as a child. If you think of these machines in a similar way, in that we're going to provide some structure to them to help them kind of get on their path, but then an incredibly important aspect of these systems is that they're able to learn in the way that we are, through their experience, through their interactions with us. And you think about how empathy develops in people. You really need to be having social interactions with folks, start to see the types of body language, the types of, blinking cues, the types of facial expressions, the types of tone that people use when they're sharing different aspects of maybe their day or something that is important to them, to really learn to understand and to feel how that might have an equivalent experience on your side. And these machines are going to have to go through that same process to some degree. It is going to be very important that they interact with people, that they interact with each other as well. They can learn empathy that way, in order to derive some of those same behaviors and those same abilities to understand what people are sharing when, they're slouched and they're frowning and they're talking about their day. So that's the first piece. The second piece around minds, like artificial minds being like human minds, there's a whole spectrum on which people are looking at this problem. So on one side of the spectrum, there's the functional side. There are a set of things the brain does. If you consider this sort of a black box, there's a set of things that black box does that allows us to behave and act in the world, to interact with each other, and to go about our day. Then there's the very detailed level, which is like, if I get right in there and I look at the way that the neurons are firing and the neurochemicals are spreading based on these different signals, could I mimic something at that level? And there are certainly people who are doing that. So there's the Blue Brain Project in Europe, where they're looking at, simulating an entire brain. They're starting with smaller creatures like mice and seeing what they can do on that front. There's also some really, really interesting, if folks are interested in brain research, check out Numenta's research. So Jeff Hawkins is a neuroscientist, and he's got a very interesting background that you can read about in technology in Silicon Valley. But he's focused on understanding what our neocortex does. So just that new layer in the brain and how that differentiates us from other creatures. And he's come together to put together a theory around human cognition called the Thousand Brains Theory of Intelligence that allows us maybe to frame some of the other data that we're collecting from all these interesting neuroscience studies. It's a holistic framework, a holistic view. And if that framework is correct, you can imagine a whole new world in terms of developing systems that are like the way that our brain works. And so I think that in a future, that is possible to get to a very close level of detail with regards to how our minds work in machines. Sorry, not succinct, but passion.
What are some downsides of your career?
I will take a stab. I can't think of like any downsides per se. I'm also like a very optimistic person. So even like there's definitely frustrating days. There's frustrating scenarios. There's things that, don't work, and they don't work for a couple days in a row. I think, some of, just figuring out that balance too of like, you want to see these projects come to life and you put so much energy into it and stuff. And I think it's more not a downside, but just something that I personally, try to work on stuff too, is realizing, I can't fix everything. I can't solve everything, and just realizing, when to let go and when to find the right balance, and realizing, like, no, that someone else's responsibility to figure that out, and I'm here to help and things like that. So I don't know if there's a downside to kind of personally what I do. I know, everyone has work-life balance and things like that comes up, and I think just practicing every day, realizing, you're there to help your team and, do the best that you can, and but just know when, like, you're done for the day, or know when you need to take a break. And I think more of those kind of like day-to-day practices and anything that you do is more helpful. And I think realizing, that you're there to help and you can't change some things, and realizing those. I don't know if that's quite a good answer, but
I think that was a good answer. I would second that it's not so much that there are downsides. There are just aspects that one enjoys perhaps less in jobs, and that will always be the case. So this question of what are your regular daily practices that allow you enough space to deal with those things that maybe are not as much fun, while still enjoying the things that you do enjoy. For me, in specific, let's see. So I spoke a little bit about the flexibility and the openness to different opportunities, but in general, I'm a very analytical person, and I like to plan, and then I like to execute on the plan. And one of the things that you find in a startup environment, but in general, as projects move forward, is that things have to change, things will change, and things have to change. So being able to let go of, as Shazzy said, some of the aspects that maybe you had held on to, but are not strictly necessary to reach the goal that you are committed to. And then just continuing to move through and evolve the things that need to be evolved and that kind of thing.
All right. And then do you have, why did you pick this career? I know, Shazzy, you talked about really liking cartoons, but is there anything in particular that made you choose that where you are now particularly?
I think it's one of those, I think you hear it too. It's like, oh, well, it chose me. A lot of, studying computer science and computer engineering, all my peers were going to Google, Facebook. And I did feel this pressure that like, oh, that's what success looks like. And that's what I need to do. So naturally, I interviewed for Google every single year, every single summer. And I was rejected every single year and every single summer. I never got an offer ever. And I think I applied more than 6 times. And each time I kind of realized, someone is telling me that's not where I'm supposed to go. Like I was dead set on making cartoons. Why am I trying to not do that path? And, a lot of those rejections at not animation studios kept happening. And it kept telling me like, I'm just going to stop because that's not where I'm supposed to be going. And again, I started then focusing my energy towards only animation studios, reaching out to people that were only in animation. And that started kind of showing me the light. And I got my first internship at DreamWorks. And I was like, okay, like I can do it. I'm in this space. And from there, it kind of went forward. So I didn't know, what company I was going to be. I didn't know what my job title was going to be. I didn't know what my day-to-day was going to be, but I knew like I needed to start putting my energy towards that space. And then things started kind of flowing a lot better instead of getting rejected from things I wasn't even interested in. So
Catherine, can you remind me the wording one more time before I answer this?
Just how did you choose the career where you are now? I know you talked a little bit about how you got sort of your path, but sort of how did you choose?
How did I choose? Well, I mean, in the spirit of landscape of possibilities, like every corner or turn or opportunity, there's several paths, and it's not that I made every decision knowing that I was going to one day want to start a company in this particular space, but that was one of the things that could have been. And it might, I'll have a career after this as well, and there'll be other things that I might be interested in trying. To give you an example, some of the other spaces that I'm super excited about specifically are agri-tech, so technology related to food production and helping to feed our growing world. Like, how are we going to do that, and how do we do it in a way that is sustainable and aligned with the values that we need to uphold in order to make sure that our world is a happy place to be in the next 50 and 100 years. So this is a perfect thing for me right now. And there would have perhaps been other perfect things too, depending on what opportunities came up. So yeah, it's all good.
It's always a difficult question to ask. I've also got a very varied background, and so it's sort of hard to explain. We have one last question, which is, I think this is mainly for Shazzy, because I know my answer is no, but have you ever animated your own short film?
Yes, I will also shamelessly plug. I do make my own animated videos. It's called Mitzi Makes It. I'll post it to the YouTube, but it's meant to inspire young girls to pursue STEAM, and made a character. I showed the behind the scenes of how I do it. I quickly showed it in my breakout room, but you can see like I use the same iPhone technology to drive the character. I make short videos that are focused, again, it's kind of preschool, kindergarten age, counting patterns, the you can do it attitude that definitely you need, through STEAM. I did just like publish my own kids book with the character too. So that is kind of my side hobby and passion. But yes, I do animate and make videos.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So once again, I'd like to say thank you to both of you for sharing your experiences. I've learned a lot and had a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And nice to meet everybody.